Good evening. I'm Jennifer Rabin, have the enormous privilege of serving as the president of Hunter College, where the American dream still comes true. Yeah. On behalf of the Jonathan Fenton, director of Roosevelt House, our wonderful Harold Holzer, and myself, it's a great pleasure to welcome you to Roosevelt House for this very special evening with some very special friends. Friends not only of Hunter College, but of the entire city of New York, Lori Tisch and the Lori Tisch Illumination Fund. Let's hear for Lori. I think we all agree that it's hard to know where to begin, or more importantly, how to end in acknowledging the Illumination Fund and Lori's boundless generosity and their profound impact on the health and well-being of their fellow New Yorkers. Just to point out a special gratitude to one cherished Roosevelt House tradition that Lori and her family made possible, the Joan Tisch Community Health Prizes. And I feel so special, Lori, to have you here when we usually celebrate that prize, which marks unsung heroes in the public health field. And this year, we're going to focus on people who were there during COVID. So how important, right? And now today, to build on that foundation, we gather to celebrate this important landmark in community health and another milestone in philanthropy led by Lori Tisch and the fund, this project called Healing Walls. This is really an ingenious and wide-ranging effort to bring art back to public hospitals in the form of cheerful, inventive, and inspiring murals to adorn the previously barren walls of our community health centers. Art to lift the spirits of both the sick and their families, as well as those who labor so heroically to treat them. And we could have not have gathered at a more appropriate venue to celebrate this truly extraordinary project. As you know, most of you, that Roosevelt House was the longtime home of Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt from 1908, right up until the time they left for the presidential inauguration in 1933. And in their final months in residence, when this home served as FDR's transition headquarters, the president-elect's famous brain trust met day in and day out a few floors above us to devise the innovative public programs meant to lift America out of the depths of the devastating Depression. Here, Roosevelt and his advisors first forged the foundational building blocks of the New Deal in this house: the infrastructure, minimum wage, Social Security, and what would soon become the Works Progress Administration. So as you know, the WPA sought to feed the hungry by putting America back to work. And as FDR memorably said in the planning stages, artists had to eat too, so they were included. So as a result, the WPA and the related program, the PWA, the Public Works Administration, set out to build new post office and hospitals to adorn their walls with works of art that not only helped lift spirits, but literally helped painters survive and thrive. Along the way, in 1939, FDR actually funded a new building for Hunter College, which we now call the North Building on Park Avenue, and he came personally there to dedicate it. Whether in new colleges, public buildings, or public hospitals, the WPA program was the innovation that gave a transformation of hope to the nation's artists and provided interior beauty for a new generation of life-altering, life-affirming public space. And that is the landmark effort that Lori sought to emulate and update with the visionary monumental Healing Walls program. This incredible program built on the work that began at the New York Health and Hospitals Corporation's novel Art in Medicine program. Arts in Medicine worked to commission a whole new generation of artists to create hospital murals for the 21st century, a kind of WPA program for our own time and space. The committee chose from among hundreds of applicants to collaborate with health center staffs and their communities to create extraordinary works of art. You'll hear more about the process tonight, but the result is this incredible gift to New York. And Lori, you yourself are a gift to New York and a work of art in your own right. And this evening, we not only celebrate this incredible exhibition, but also this publication of the beautifully illustrated new art book from Rick Luftglass and his co-editors, who we honor as celebrating this beautiful project and this wonderful exhibit that you helped inspire, Rick. So our own Healing Walls display, which we opened this evening, and if you haven't seen it, please join us after to enjoy it, brings some of these amazing new designs to our own students, faculty, and of course you, our community. We're so grateful, Rick, for your leadership here. And I also want to give a shout out to Deborah Gardner, who did a really beautiful job of curating this. One of my favorite things, so please take a look at it, in this exhibit, for the first time in 40 years, are two newly restored panels from the original Alice in Wonderland in New York mural that was once on the walls of Gouverneur Hospital in Lower Manhattan. They were created in 1938 to 1940 by painter Abraham Champigny, and the murals were placed in deep storage when the hospital was demolished, and they haven't been seen since. So what a joy to unveil these curious works tonight, side by side with other Roosevelt-era New Deal art, in tandem with the new art from the Healing Walls project. I think we all need a little healing these days, sometimes more than a little, and Laurie Tisch knows that art goes a long way to cure what ails us and to lift us up into new heights. So, Laurie, you named your foundation the Illumination Foundation. You illuminate the eyes, the mind, the heart, and the soul. And it's been your goal, and we share that goal, to continue to dedicate ourselves to our motto, Mihi Cura Futuri, the care of the future is mine. So tonight, we talk about the past, we talk about what you've done now, and we think of that impact on the future. We're so happy tonight to welcome our panel. Larissa Trinder, who's the Senior Director of HHC's Arts in Medicine program, Dr. Eric Wai, an emergency physician who serves as HHC's Senior Vice President. And I just want to stop for a minute to acknowledge Eric and his whole team at HHC. I guess it's H&H now. I'm a little bit old-fashioned since you rebranded. But Hunter this week, I think many of you saw, announced a $52 million grant from the great philanthropist Leonard Lauder to train nurse practitioners who will work with H&H to help serve the most underserved population in our city. And you guys have just been the most amazing partners in planning this program. And Eric and your team, just to you, we really look forward to working with you. And I think it's sort of wonderful, as I introduce our next really extraordinary panelist, the preeminent arts historian, Barbara Haskell, that you two work, so you're at the Whitney and also are so much a part of Leonard Lauder's philanthropy. So how wonderful is that, coming full circle? And then rounding out our panel is, of course, the wonderful Rick Lufglas. Rick, I was looking for some words. I was going to write how to describe you, and I just decided the best word is, this man's a true mensch. So I don't know if that's an artistic term, Barbara, but we'll let it go. But Rick, you make so much happen, and you bring us together with so many great ideas. We're really thrilled to host tonight's event, but really to have this incredible exhibit for our community, and we really hope everybody takes it in and enjoys the restorations, the new art, and our history. So with that, thank you so much, and Laurie, it's wonderful to have you with us. Please welcome a true New York giant, Laurie Tisch.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I think I'm going to start. I'm going to keep with the Yiddish motif and quote an old Borscht Belt comedian you probably have heard this already, who said, "I don't really deserve that introduction, but then I don't deserve arthritis either." So I'll take it. So thank you. So many of you know that at the Illumination Fund, our mission is to increase access and opportunity for all New Yorkers and to foster healthy and vibrant communities. We have been so fortunate to have a long and productive association with Roosevelt House and Hunter College. We've partnered on so many projects. The Preston Robert Tisch Award for great leadership, the Joan H. Tisch Health Award, as you mentioned, and so many other projects. And speaking of the Preston Robert Tisch Award for leadership, one of our very early speakers was the great Governor Mario Cuomo, and what an honor to have Mrs. Matilda Cuomo and Maria Cuomo Cole. I feel like I also don't deserve to have such longtime and wonderful friends as Matilda and Maria, but what a great pleasure to have you here. Thank you. This new collaboration, the exhibition, is related to our book, Healing Walls, and it's truly extraordinary and groundbreaking. And again, as Jennifer mentioned, thank you also to Deborah Gardner, who did such a masterful job in curating these wonderful murals. So back to how did we get here? About 5 years ago, the Illumination Fund launched our Arts and Health Initiative, which is a multi-million-dollar, multi-year grants program supporting many organizations that use arts as a tool in healing, with special emphasis on addressing trauma, stigma, and aging-related diseases. Guess why we're doing that one? If you know, keep it to yourself. Last year, we added a program in arts and mental health, supporting about 15 new organizations in communities disproportionately affected by the pandemic, by the COVID pandemic. As we developed our partnerships, we felt a deep kinship with New York City's public hospital system. I mean, talk about access, which is at the heart of everything we do at the Illumination Fund. H&H welcomes absolutely everybody: the doctors, the nurses, administration, and everyone in the system works tirelessly to ensure that every single patient gets the best care possible, regardless of race, immigration, or financial status. H&H is truly a visionary institution and leader in community-based healthcare. And our program, the Arts and Medicine program, exemplifies this innovative approach to care, and not just for patients, but for the staff and the entire community. This mural project is just one program in our much larger arts and health program, which is overseen, as Jennifer said, by Dr. Eric Way and administered by Larissa Trinder, Director of Arts and Medicine, both of whom you'll hear from this evening. Healthcare work is hard and stressful work, even in the best of times, and being sick and going to the hospital can be both difficult and frightening. This mural project was conceived before the pandemic as a way to relieve way to relieve stress and strengthen the bonds between hospital staff, patients, and the surrounding community. The murals aim to foster pride in the facility and provide beauty, comfort, and solace to everyone. And from what we have been told, they have absolutely overachieved their purpose. The mural project is the largest public hospital mural project since the New Deal. And Jennifer, thank you for not mentioning that I was not here during the New Deal. But in case there are any questions, I was not. And one of the most important aspects is that the mural making is truly collaborative. The artists work with the entire community to develop ideas for the murals, and then everybody who wants to paints them. Anyone can participate. They actually even let me paint in a few of the parts. And I can say from that experience that the process it's healing and it's just fun. And now the murals are permanent additions to the hospitals and are located in all 5 boroughs, along with many that were created back in the 30s. And now you no longer have to travel from hospital to hospital to experience and benefit from their beauty and hopeful messages. There was one early mural that I helped paint with a big roller, and it was the long-term nursing facility. Rick will remember the name. And there was a woman who, an older African-American woman who was in a wheelchair, and she asked me to come over, and I went over, and she said, "Would you tell them that this is the first fun thing we've ever done here?" I said, "Well, that's a little bit above my pay grade," but she said, "We should be doing more of this. This is the first thing that's been fun." I'm sure now Eric and Larissa have added many more fun things, but we were happy to get the ball rolling. We created this book to bring the murals together in one place, not just to document them, but to tell a little more of their history, and also, most importantly, to thank the 1,500 hospital employees, community members, healthcare workers, and others who gave their time and their really creative energy to bring this project to fruition. We're so proud that the Illumination Fund played a role in creating these murals, and we sincerely hope that this book and the exhibition will be a reminder of the ways that art can enliven and improve hospital settings and help people who are suffering. We brought books with us tonight as a thank you to all of you for coming to this program. So we do hope you'll take one home and spread the word about this wonderful project. And Healing Walls is also available to order on Amazon. It won't fit in your stocking, but we know it will make a great holiday gift. And all of the proceeds will go to the Arts and Medicine program at H&H. I also hope that you will take the time to read this book from cover to cover. When it was first released a couple of weeks ago, I read it very quickly and was very impressed. But then I went and read the entire thing in great detail this afternoon. And honestly, I was blown away. I have such great appreciation to Rick, to Jan Rothschild, and to Barbara Haskell, and all the others who created Healing Walls. This book is filled with so many interesting facts, gorgeous pictures. It's truly magnificent, and yes, I will say it's even illuminating. But Healing Walls is not the end of the Community Wall Project. We at the Illumination Fund are underwriting a new series of murals at H&H, which will enable the creation of 20 new murals over the next 2 years. I hope they invite me back to paint. And thank you. And now it really is my great pleasure to welcome our mentioned residents, the executive director, the brilliant executive director of the Illumination Fund, who will tell you a bit more about the history of this project and introduce the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Jennifer, Harold, Deborah, and a slew of others. This really was a team effort. What I'd like to do, those of you here in person, and there are a lot on Zoom too, but those of you here in person got to see the history upstairs through the WPA mural, the precedent of what we'll be talking about today. And in many ways, the Community Mural Project and the 1,500 participants builds upon that history, sort of an 80-year arc of the arts and murals at New York City Health and Hospitals, but it's also a departure or a new facet because of the collaborative nature. That project of bringing together 1,500 people through focus groups, through paint parties, through engagement days, etc., was just really mind-blowing. I was probably at every one, almost. And it's just, you know, I mean, I love my job, and having and having opportunities like that were just so invigorating. So so I want to give you, since you experienced the exhibit, I want to give you a taste of what was a video of the first year, pre-COVID. So if I can ask the tech folks to roll it.
Facilitator artists to bring the staff, the patients, and the people in the community to paint and to come up with a masterpiece is something that I will tell my great-grandchildren about.
Hospitals are usually some place that people go for bad news or they're scared.
You know, you deal with so many different stresses because, you know, you have people's health and lives in your hands. So to take this brief moment just to come and to paint and to know that something that you're contributing to will be a part of the hospital for years and years to come is an amazing thing.
Really great to just see staff members walk by just today in our installation and point out the parts that they painted and take great pride in that. And
they said it was so releasing their stress to paint. I use bright colors. Maybe that helps. I hope.
David.
That's how you,
You can do the inside.
oh, you want to do it yourself?
Okay.
I see the movie.
We all know that the arts have the power to heal and to relieve stress. I can't think of a better way to demonstrate that than through this project.
And then we'll set you up with colors. What colors?
Like that.
We can do that too for next week. We can print it out so you can actually do it color.
You know, we'll challenge our patients to think about their lives, to think about the hospital.
The one that you said you liked the most, where it says "Earth, life comes from the sea." So it's like it kind of draws in with the community and what it's surrounded by.
It has been an incredible way of finding and learning more about each of you stories. Because we have staff from all over, patients from all over just come here.
Medicine and love, family.
And all unite together.
It's really New York City.
It's New York City.
This really represents what arts and medicine at New York City Health and Hospitals is all about, which is engaging our residents, our patients, our staff, the community to come together and reap the benefits of art and the healing powers they could bring.
I'm standing here and I'm relaxing, and I'm actually just doing light brush strokes. It's relaxing. It's healing.
But to see beauty, to take your mind off your stress or off your diagnosis or off whatever you're feeling for that day.
Art touches you in a very deep level. To actually connect with other people, to others.
I actually got inspired a lot by their stories or what they told me or what things they missed the most from home to bring that as elements inside the design process.
It represents a lot of the history here, the passion, the concerns, even the anxiety of the staff.
Here they were very proud of the babies that are delivered here, so I tried to capture that. And
The thing that I like about murals is the big scale of things, because you can do something really big, you can express yourself really big, and then when you get the community involved, it just reunites people and you can do something all together. It's not just one artist.
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you a legacy lights the way.
We arrived at the theme together as one.
Oh, she's done this sooner. But this moment of capturing the essence of this community and the richness of its culture, its diversity, the spirit and the heart of the people captured in this mural.
And I also want to thank, we've got some special guests. We've got some of the artists, some of whom you saw. And if you can just give a little bit of a wave. Patricia, Nancy, Sophia. And that mural, that video, which we did before COVID, thinking, oh, everything's going to be great. And we were going to premiere it in March of 2020 for the second year of the murals. And of course, all hell broke loose. So no one had seen it before. And we have the videographer, David Schulder, here, who's also never seen it on the screen. So Jan Rothschild and I and Lynn
Dang, who was Larissa's predecessor, spent a long time in that video, and it's just great to see it come to fruition. The three panelists, three esteemed panelists, are Barbara Haskell, who is an American art historian, curator at the Whitney Museum, and among many other points of expertise, an amazing expert on murals during both the WPA and Mexico before that. How she curated an exhibit some of you may have seen at the Whitney called Vida Americana, which was about the influence of the Mexican muralists of the 20s and around that era, revolutionary time, on American art of the 30s and since then. And not only sort of what you would expect in terms of murals that followed, but also Jacob Lawrence's influence and various others that people didn't realize had that connection. So she did the exhibit, she did the book, she did, I don't know, 20 other books? Something. 20 other exhibits, many others last year. Yes, between midnight and 6 a.m. And Larissa Trinder is Senior Director of Arts and Medicine at New York City Health and Hospitals, just joined a few months ago and has revolutionized and brought new energy and ideas to the Arts and Medicine Department, so you'll hear about that. And Eric Way, who's the Senior Vice President, Chief Quality Officer of New York City Health and Hospitals as a system, and he'll tell you a little bit about what that means. So before we get started, I would like to ask you, Eric, you know, we say, well, it's the largest municipal hospital system in the country. What does that mean?
Right,
Not that size matters, but it is impressive.
Yeah. No, I have a funny story. So I came from Los Angeles, where I was working for the second largest municipal safety net system. And Dr. Katz, Mitch, my boss, president and CEO of H&H, had agreed to come, and he was recruiting me. And he's like, I just got to warn you, it's big. It's bigger than LA. I was like, oh, how much bigger could it be, right? LA has 3 hospitals. Health and Hospitals has 11 hospitals, and 5 skilled nursing facilities, and over 70 community health centers. So just trying to like learn the names, I had to create flashcards. And then I figured out, like, going by boroughs, I had to go north to south. And I still name them north to south, otherwise I'll forget them or miss one. But it is, you know, by far the biggest. LA has 3 hospitals. This one has 11. We serve 1.1 million New Yorkers a year, often the most vulnerable patients in New York, undocumented, homeless, behavioral health, you name it. You know, we're here to take care of these special populations that deserve the highest quality and the safest patient care of the best experience. And so I think the 2 most important words in our mission is really without exception. Anyone who comes through the door without exception deserves as a right healthcare and the highest quality healthcare. And so that's what we stand for. Some of the other stats about our system: 43,000 staff. We have our own managed care plan, Metro Plus Health. We take care of justice involved through our correctional health services. We have a home health agency, community care. So when you're talking big, right, this is it, right? Only the VA is a bigger public system in the United States. And so, right, it really is a privilege to work for the system.
And because of that alignment with our mission, as Lori said, access and opportunity for all New Yorkers, we saw the resonance and we were compelled to decide to partner with New York City Health and Hospitals. Many hospitals have great arts-based programs. New York City Health and Hospitals represents all of us. regardless of ability to pay, as Lori said, immigration status, et cetera. And public hospitals don't have endowments, they don't have galas, they don't have, all of the staples of nonprofit fundraising. And so it's not where philanthropists tend to put their money. And so we really dove in. That was something where we felt like we had an imperative to do and where we knew we could have an impact. So Eric, my next question for you is, as I said, your title is Chief Quality, aside from Senior Vice President, Chief Quality Officer and overseeing the Office of Quality and Safety. And I know that that's not about the quality of art and the safety of art. So granted, that's part of it. But so I was wondering if you could explain what that is, because it's not a term that's known outside of the hospitals.
Yeah, so the Office of Quality and Safety formed in 2018 when I started here, and it has everything that you would expect in a quality and patient safety office, right? Quality assurance, performance improvements, quality improvement, risk management, patient safety, all of those things. But Mitch has a tendency, like every few months, to say, Eric, because I love you, why don't you take on this additional thing, like hospital, police, and security? Like, what do I know about hospital, police? So, emergency management in the middle of a once-in-a-century pandemic. And one of these conversations was, what do you think about arts and medicine? I was like, sounds interesting, right? Sure. But it's so much more aligned than that, right? Our first kind of quality and safety transformation plan, we really boiled it down to 4 key points, right? The culture was wrong. We needed to build a culture of safety, to put our focus back on our most precious resource, which is our people, the 43,000 staff work here, and restore something called psychological safety, the willingness to raise your hand and say, something went wrong, something almost went wrong, right? Something is a setup to go wrong. I have an idea on how we could do better care, safer care, without fear of blame, without fear of retaliation, right? And so part of that is empowering our staff to tell us how we can do better every day for every patient, right? And so using the arts to heal our staff, right? I remember in December of 2017, first visit here to New York City, first dinner with Mitch, debriefing those initial meetings. I said they need H3. They need Helping Healers Heal. This program that we created in LA for emotional and psychological support for healthcare workers. The things that we see day in and day out. I'm an emergency physician. I don't talk about the traumas that I see, the blood, right? The children that are hit by cars. Like, that's not dinner table conversation material, right? But we hold it all inside. And we had a crisis in the House of Medicine. We were losing 400 to 500 doctors a year in the US to suicide. And then we couldn't even count the nurses, right? I went to a med school of 100 students per class. That's like my whole med school being wiped out every year just by suicide. And that's not counting dropout, that's not counting substance abuse, like all the other negative outcomes of burnout and things that were happening to our healthcare workers. And so I love J.W. Marriott's quote, you take care of your employees will take care of your customers, and the business will take care of itself. I think it's even more important in healthcare, where everything is about that human touch, that human interaction, using empathy and that human connection to heal others. And so I saw that our healthcare workers, our H&H staff, their tanks were empty, right? It was vicarious trauma, it was second victimization, it was burnout, right? And somebody whose tank of empathy and kindness and all those things are empty, like, what kind of care are they actually able to provide others? And so Helping Healers Heal is the first step of that. Arts and medicine is another major, giant leap in our ability to heal our staff so that they have full tanks to be able to give their very best, right? I experienced this through COVID, right? Walking by that Elmhurst Strong mural every morning as an interim CEO was way, way better than any coffee, any tea, any energy drink, right? It was a shot in the arm of okay, this is Elmhurst Strong, right? This is the mural that represents what this hospital stands for through this pandemic and beyond the pandemic. I'm ready to get to work, right? Hearing the songs that we played every time a COVID positive patient was extubated, and seeing staff full PPE, dancing, hugging, right? Smiling. You could tell they were smiling by their eyes. I couldn't see their faces. But just a little bit of joy and a little bit of light in like such a darkness. And it was all through the arts.
Thank you. And I think, you know, you raise a good point when you mentioned burnout, because I remember the first conversation I had with the committee at H&H. I hate to use acronyms, but we can't help it. H&H and WPA. It just comes naturally. You have to get used to it. But the head of behavioral health for the system was there, and we were talking about, well, what could the role of the arts be? And he raised a couple of things, one of which was burnout and suicide rates. And my thought was, okay, but what can the arts do? There's so many other complex factors. And as we talked about it, we realized what are the contributing factors to burnout? Comfort in your workplace, collaboration with your colleagues, feeling connected to community and your place and your patients, ability to observe deeply. All of these things, if they're a whack, they contribute towards burnout. If you can address those are some of the triggers, and by addressing them, they're preventive factors. And that's what we think about in terms of impact. So, speaking of impact, Larissa, there's a burgeoning field of arts and health, including arts and medicine, which tends to be the hospital sort of version of it nationally. And Larissa is in that field, not just in H&H. And so I thought I would just ask you sort of what is that field and what's happening, because this is pretty new.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's wonderful to be here tonight, and it's wonderful to work every day next to Dr. Way and be at those quality and safety meetings, sitting next to the NYPD and risk management and arts and medicine. So it's pretty interesting going to work every day. I'm feel very fortunate. But from a macro level, if we want to just get on the balcony for a minute, what's really happening in the arts and medicine space is that we're having a major moment. And you know, this is happening with some really powerful institutions around the world. In 2019, the World Health Organization did a review called the Health Evidence Network that really kind of pushed forward evidence that the role of the arts play a very significant role in public health. Also at the same time, there was a lot of work being done at Johns Hopkins with Neuro Arts Blueprint, who are forming an incredible roadmap that includes policy, technology, and a lot of things around this space, research particularly, and many others as well. But so the fact that all these academic institutions and powerful institutions in the world are kind of coming together and raising awareness all at the same time, you know, it's an important time for us. So that being said, at the health and hospital, you know, health and hospitals, the arts and medicine, as you just heard, really is fortunate to play a significant role in the health of our caregivers and staff. And so you're going to hear from Barbara Haskell soon about the initial impact that the WPA murals created. You saw some of that upstairs, and the immersive experiences that certainly created environments that were healing walls, but how that's iterated over the years into really a very wonderful department that is sole role is to make sure that the care of the caregivers is through the arts and humanities. So I feel very fortunate, but that's the high level.
Great. And we'll hear some specifics, and you saw the video. But I want to turn to Barbara. As I said, there is a historic precedence that goes back about 80 years to FDR's New Deal, which he hatched here, and that Eleanor was particularly supportive of the arts, of getting artists to work and using the arts. And so, you know, I was here. And in fact, they did some initial murals before the New Deal that were when Roosevelt was governor of New York. And so he set the precedent, and he sort of embraced it in his effort here at Roosevelt House, taking it to, he lived there when he was governor too, but it kind of got him going. So, so Barbara, if you could give us a sense both of the original impetus for Roosevelt, why he saw it as important to employ artists?
Right, right. So I think one of the things, Harry Hopkins, his administrator, as Jennifer said, did say artists have to eat like everyone else. So one of the first tasks of the Roosevelt administration when they came in is to address the economic collapse by putting people back to work and restarting the economy. So that was one issue, but it became much more important. They saw his administration, the people running the WPA really saw the arts as a way to heal a community, which was at that point the country, 1/3 of the population was unemployed. Droughts were devastating the Midwest, and the country had lost faith in its future. And art was a way to construct a sense of shared history, a shared narrative, and to establish faith in the future. So that it took on a very almost metaphysical quality, I think, especially in the mural division. And much like the Illumination Fund, the WPA Murals was a complicated collaborative event. So the artist was hired and then had to work with the community. And many times, many sketches back and forth and approvals. Some murals were never approved. Some murals were started and stopped. But it was a sense of the community coming together. And I think in hospitals, it had an even more important role, that there's something in just hearing the two of you talk tonight, that I think hospitals share in our culture. They share with religion the sense that life and death happens there. And in the 30s, one of the things different about hospitals is so many people live there. So children, for example, that had permanent disabilities, they were in hospitals in long-term care. Nurses lived in hospitals. Doctors lived in hospitals. So there was no ability to kind of retreat to one's domestic, circle and get recharge, so that the hospitals were the place where everything happened. And I think that the WPA administrators really saw their work in hospitals as being something even more important than what was happening in libraries and public buildings across the country, that there was something special about hospitals because of this sense of life and death that pervaded the hallways in every room.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, the post office is wonderful. You can mail, a postcard and enjoy a mural, but this was part of a living, breathing daily experience. You pointed out in the essay in the book, and I found this particularly interesting, and in light of what's upstairs, is that it wasn't just one type of mural. There were, and each one has sort of a different intention, a different style, a different location. And so one's in the hallway of the nurse's residence or in the recreation room of the nurse's residence had a very different purpose than ones that were in the pediatric ward, which are about fairy tales and toy parades and other sort of fun stuff and healing stuff. And then others were around the medical history that were either for doctors. There was sort of an educational aspect. Sometimes doctors and residents would sort of come and get lectured in front of them. And in other cases, they were meant for the public with this history from like the plague and Greece on to 1930s, and the idea was to build the confidence of the patients in, you're in a modern environment and you needn't worry. We're not wearing plague masks like you'll see up in the William Palmer Queens Hospital mural upstairs. So can you talk about sort of the different contexts and purposes and intentions and the abstract as well?
Right, so absolutely. So the Children's Hospital, the subjects that mostly that artists chose were fairy tales and circus imagery, a way to kind of stimulate the sort of mental explorations to let these young patients think of things other than being in bed. So to stimulate the kind of fantasies that they might have in terms of fairy tales and circus imagery. So those were dominant subjects in the Children's Hospital. And as you said, for the nurses' rooms, for the doctors' rooms, there was a lot of emphasis on medicine itself as a way not only to be informative, but also, as you say, inspirational. And just as you have done, that the artists would sometimes take years for them to do a mural. They did very extensive research, researching the history of medicine, specific doctors, and it was a way to give inspiration and really reconfirm for doctors and nurses what they were doing was important.
And some of them were calming, some were challenging, and some were restful. It wasn't like, here's Muzak.
Right, and the interesting thing, I mean, is that in the 30s, the dominant style was realism, and most people coming to a hospital were more comfortable with realistic images. There was the head of the mural division in New York was an abstract artist named Burgoyne Diller, and he's been credited many, many times by not only supporting abstract art, but really, in a way, keeping abstract artists alive. And Burgoyne Diller has been credited by Bolotowski, for example, whose mural is upstairs, with really advancing the development of abstract art in America. And he would do it by not talking about abstraction, but talking about restful spaces and convincing the supporting institutions that what the public didn't want to see was images of their everyday problems, industry and life in New York. That having an abstract image, soft colors, geometric shapes was a very soothing kind of open space that it provided in hospitals. So that Diller was really, I'd say, instrumental in furthering the development of abstract art.
And the murals that Deborah Gardner chose here are ones that are extant, that exist, that you can go to H&H hospitals and actually see. In Harlem, there are several. In Queens Hospital, there's one, Elmhurst, et cetera. And the Alice in Wonderland ones upstairs are not yet in place. I mean, there are actually several others, but these are in the process of being restored. The two that you see upstairs, this is their first appearance in 4 decades. They were just restored. The restorers of those pieces are here. And can we hear from Lippert Conservers? And there is a famous story covered in New York Times and all over the place about how this art conservator, Alan Ferrance, went in. He worked with Landmarks Committee. He knew that this building, Governor Hospital, was about to be demolished, and he knew that there were murals in there that had been exposed to open air because the building had been vacant, and he went in and he rescued them. And he brought them to his studio, and they stayed for 40 years. Some of them came out, but it's expensive to restore. And so H&H was finally able to find the money to allocate towards it. And Alan Ferrance, who I just referred, and he was also restored some of the others, you'll say, his wife, he passed away a few years ago, I think 2017. His wife is here. So Denise. So this really is sort of a cast of thousands.
Well, I just want to say too about restoration, because what the history of the WPA murals was not always so positive. That as the 40s and 50s and the decades rolled on, that hospitals were moved. They were closed. They needed different kind of equipment. Light sockets were placed on them. Doors were opened as they rearranged and reconstructed the spaces of hospitals. The murals were really a secondary idea, which is why what you're doing now is such an important advance in recognizing that what art can do in hospitals and the kind of nurturing, healing, comforting feeling that art can give. And the restoration of some of these murals is just fantastic. They're there behind multiple coats of paint. and it's just a question of really having a restorer get to it.
Yeah, Larissa and I were just out at the archives in Sunset Park about a week or two ago, and we found what we seem to see as records of murals that are at Bellevue that we thought were lost, that are behind layers of paint. Unless
We're
that
sure
building
they're
came down,
somewhere.
someone has to find them and someone has to pay for them. So the use of the art is something very distinct in New York City Health and Hospitals because the programs are geared towards towards staff. And if you could talk a little about how the art is used, and it's not just the WPA, but there's a collection. Very few people know that New York City Health and Hospitals has the largest publicly owned art collection in New York City. And it's a treasure, and people don't know about it. And it enhances healthcare environments, and it's publicly accessible to all. You don't have to go to a museum. Doctors see it every day. It's a part of life. So, Larissa, can you tell us about the collection and how it's used?
Yeah, happy to. And you can't see all of it because some of it's in patient spaces, but you certainly can. And yes, the impetus for the collection was really, as Barbara just so eloquently laid out, placed in facilities to create immersive experiences. And that over the years, in the 60s and 70s, during the Percent for Art policy under Ed Koch, there was a initiative where any kind of a capital build in the city, and anywhere for that matter, really meant that 1% of that budget needed to go towards art and design. So it was at that time we received about several thousand pieces of art, many of them abstract, and just really, really beautiful pieces. And so the idea behind this and sort of the strategy is to equitably be distributing them throughout the entire healthcare facility and our clinics in order to create these healing environments that we're talking about tonight. So what's been really interesting is that's an ongoing process, as you can imagine, as you just heard about the landscape at H&H, and figuring out ways to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our facilities. We're conditioning the artwork along the way. We're reframing it. We're restoring it. It's a constant thing. But I can tell you, it's extremely important to the health system. Our teams love the art. We are overflowing with requests to get these things moved around a lot. We have a brand new director of collection, Naomi Huth, who's here tonight, that is taking on a lot of that for me. So it's going to really make things a little easier, but that's really one component of it. But what we do that's really interesting is we utilize a lot of pieces in the art for some of our programmatic efforts as well. And one of the ones, Heart of Medicine, that is probably becoming a really signature program along with the community mural program is a program that's based in observational sessions. It's sort of been embedded in medical curricula for many decades. It was to increase and deepen empathy, create greater diagnostic skills for doctors and staff. And what it sort of has become is really a model for anyone in the health system. So how it works for us is we have a partnership with the Brooklyn Museum and are starting one with the Whitney Museum, where we have an educator that comes in from that museum. They bring an art therapist with them, and we use a piece from our collection. Sometimes both of us have the same artist in our collection, actually often. And we conduct an observational session with about 25 to 30 people that work in the health system. It can be a resident, it can be a surgeon, it can be the person working the elevator, the person in the kitchen. They're all coming together, and they have this amazing experience with an art activity, and the art therapist takes them through this whole process. So that has really, really become so popular, we almost cannot keep up with the demand. But the other component about that is we do it with very specific and customized clinical teams. So next week at Lincoln in the Bronx, we have a focus group on the palliative care team. And so really making sure that we are thinking about the staff that every day work in palliative care in the Bronx, what their needs are, understanding what their emotional self-care needs are, and making sure our program and curricula align with that. So it's really an exciting time.
I find that program so interesting, the Heart of Medicine, because it is an established model with an evidence base, but it's mostly at medical schools, and where students have the time, and it's an exercise. Not that they don't have a lot of time, but it's an exercise. It's sort of a required course for some people. And it teaches observational skills. And if you can imagine, anytime you're in a hospital and there are different residents and doctors and nurses coming through, everyone has a different opinion and a different diagnosis. You know, oh, you have this, no, you have that. And so imagine standing around a work of art and being with doctors and nurses, and they're saying, well, I see this. No, I see that. No, he's sad. No, he's happy. No, they're in love. No, they hate each other. I mean, you know, it's that subjective interpretation that doctors, it's not all science. I mean, it is science-based, but there's a lot of subjectivity. And art teaches you that. So,
Yeah,
Eric.
The first time I did something like Heart of Medicine was as a fourth-year resident in Michigan. We were in Ann Arbor, but we had a fourth-year retreat where we went to Detroit, went to one of the museums, did one of these, you know, guided art observation. And it was the first time, like for me, that was like a aha. 14 emergency medicine physicians trained in the same program, all graduated from an American ACGME accredited medical school, looking at the same painting, and there's 14 different opinions about what's going on, right? And so it just reminded me, like, I could be walking into a trauma bay and assuming that the rest of the team is thinking the same top 3 diagnoses, the same things that are going on, but everyone's bringing their own biases, their own experiences, right? Somebody might have missed the ectopic pregnancy, and so they're never gonna miss that again. Somebody might have missed the appendicitis, they're never gonna miss that again, right? And so all of that just reinforces how important it is to communicate, to verbalize out loud what you're thinking, what you're seeing, to get other people's opinions, right? To kind of get the strength of the whole team's, right? Observational skills, diagnostic skills, right? To better, right? Hone in on the best and the correct diagnosis and the correct course of action. And so every time we do this, it just once again reinforces for me, right? Like we're all seeing different things, right?
Although one of the things about art is that it's also very personal, and it's a springboard for our own ruminations and our own experiences that we can see in a work of art. And I think that's one of its powers, that everyone that comes into the hospital will have a different experience based on their own histories, and that art is really a catalyst for people's self-reflection and fantasies.
And you'll see that in the murals upstairs in the exhibit. I mean, if you look at that Bolotowski mural that was at what was then Roosevelt Island, now it was Welfare Island, now Roosevelt Island, everyone's going to bring a different interpretation. And for some it's calming, and for some it might be a little disorienting, but if they spend time on it. So, and that's where the abstract is so fascinating.
I just have a funny story about the Hospital of Chronic Diseases that the Bolotowski mural was in. That it was always a collaborative experience, collaborative kind of event. And sometimes a mural would actually be placed in the hospital and then have to be removed. And one of the funny to us now, one of the funny stories about the Hospital of Chronic Diseases is they commissioned several artists to do photo murals having to do with sports. So this was a men's facility, men were living there. And I think they thought it would encourage the men to think about the future and to have pleasant thoughts.
And exercise.
Right, but instead what it did apparently is it triggered all their prurient interests, and they started harassing the nurses and putting graffiti on the murals that was sexual in nature. Well, they were women in tennis shorts and short skirts.
So that photo mural lasted about a year.
A year, and then it was replaced by the Bolotowski that you see upstairs.
So everyone has a different interpretation. And that mural now is at what's now the Bloomberg building at Cornell Tech. They saved the mural and they installed it within the new building. And so it has a new life, not an H&H facility, but a new life. It's really exciting to hear, to know about. So I want to give you a chance for a couple of questions, or if you have questions of each other. But we'll also be upstairs, so you can ask any of us questions up there. But is there anything burning you want to ask each other or the audience or anything like that? I see a hand way in the back, hiding behind the 4 freedoms.
I believe I had heard that there had been a Diego Rivera mural in Goldwater Hospital, which was before that the diseases hospital on Roosevelt Island. Was that ever found before they tore down the hospital? Was there any documentation that it existed but then didn't, or what
No,
happened?
Diego Rivera's life in his art in the United States has been fairly well documented. He made 5 murals in the U.S., but he didn't work in a hospital, so that's an apocryphal story. I think what maybe started that rumor is that he and the other Mexican muralists influenced all the WPA murals. The idea that art was for the public and that art could create this sense of shared experience and a sense of faith and a kind of build on community was something that we as Americans inherited from the Mexican muralists. So he's maybe given credit in a very legitimate way for what was happening in the hospitals. But he never was hired. There were several Mexican artists that had worked with him that made murals, and until 1937, one could be employed on the project without being an American citizen. So there are several Mexican murals by Mexicans, but not by Rivera.
Like one at Bellevue.
Yes,
and
the
also,
2 at Bellevue were the two
Yeah.
Mexicans who had worked with Siqueiros and Rivera.
Well, and the other thing, actually, not many people know is there's a gorgeous round mural that still exists at Bellevue. You can see pictures of it upstairs. And the artist there, David Margolis, actually was a student and assistant to Diego Rivera and worked a little bit on the famous murals at Rockefeller Center. Diego Rivera loved him, but he never got that kind of renown, and Rivera was not involved in that particular mural. Yes, let's go up here front. Yes.
Comments. I'm a poet, and I was wanting to share that creativity is art of the heart. I'm all at the hardest. So if you put art and you put HE, you've got the heart. So that is what is the share. Creativity is art of the heart.
Thank you.
Well said.
That's the heart of medicine, too. Other question, I see someone here on the left with a mask.
So I'm hearing a lot of descriptions about things being soothing and comforting and pleasant and maybe celebratory, and all that seems very appropriate for that kind of setting. But I'm also, it just triggers this reaction, and I'm wondering about this sort of the tradition of Nellie Bly or Geraldo Rivera sneaking in the cameras into Willowbrook, or the Young Lords occupying the old Lincoln Hospital. I mean, in other words, the public really trying, as you put it, trying to make things better. I imagine there's people within the profession that also really took stands and were tenacious about improving horrific things. Is that story, are those stories represented anywhere in these murals?
I don't know if you want to answer that. I haven't seen it represented explicitly.
Are you talking about represented in terms of imagery, or?
I mean, many of the artists were very politically engaged and very active, and the Artists Union wrote a lot, very critical of the business powers that were funding a lot of the programs. But the conflicts themselves, I don't think came to play. It was not that wasn't the goal. It wasn't the environment. And let me give you one example. Gouverneur Hospital, when that closed down, or was threatened to be closed down for years, there was a community movement to keep it open. Ultimately, it was the emergency room lost its accreditation in 1970. They closed the building down. They built a new hospital with a new mural, by the way. But I think it was the Young Lords and some of the others participated. So it didn't reflect in the art, but it reflected in the activism.
You know, and if I can add, you know, the story of the Young Lords is really fascinating, and I don't even know that Eric is familiar with what I'm about to be working on, but, you know, the South Bronx has a community land trust and the collective there, and that building is really being looked at to be a community center called HEART, which would be Health, Education, and the Arts. And they've reached out to us to see what it would look like to create exhibitions in that community with some of the amazing art pieces from our collection juxtaposed with the youth in that community and the artwork that they're trying to do. And these are young people that will never have the opportunity or have never thought they would to be next to a David Hammons piece or a Romare Bearden. And so really looking at those as opportunities. And then the other thing I might add is the Department of Cultural Affairs, we're working on a very amazing public artist in residency program this year with an artist from Bushwick that is highlighting the challenges we have around gun violence. And you know, that is being done in a system-wide approach, and they are looking at some of our very significant gun prevention and gun violent programs to address these things. So artists really have an opportunity to amplify some of these complex issues facing society.
Yeah. Yes.
My doctoral dissertation about the WPA murals. Barbara knows that. Greta Berman is
Oh, you're
my
Greta
name.
Berman.
Yeah.
I've read so much of your work.
So I wrote
Thanks for
that in
coming.
1975, which I'm still teaching full-time at
At
Juilliard.
Juilliard, right?
And my Juilliard students, if I said that, it would be like 1875, so I don't usually say that. But a couple of things. One, I wanted to really give credit to Ed Koch, because at the time that the Harlem Hospital murals, the building was going to be coming down. And a group of us, Romare Bearden and some other people, went over and testified, and he gave money for those to be restored. He didn't publicize it because he was worried that people would say, oh, you're giving money for art and you're not taking care of safety and health and stuff like that. So bravo to him. But I have a question about the Harlem Hospital murals. They are in what's called a mural pavilion in a gallery there. And if anybody here has any influence there, and I think we have a lot of people with influence, they are not helpful to getting, I've tried to take people there, I suggest it, and it's often closed.
We're working on that. We are. That's come up multiple times, and I appreciate you bringing that up. And there's a few different reasons it's the way it is now, but we're definitely working on that.
Yeah, please, because there was so much that went into
I know.
that.
I agree with you.
Including the credit to Ellen Ferrantz
Yes.
also, who was the first one to restore those.
The other thing, and this is public, and you've written about it, but during that during that restoration, the architects incorporated several panels from the Vertis Hayes mural into this amazing 5-floor glass front. You go by on, I think it's Lenox Avenue, 135th, 137th. You will see this massive reproduction of some of those panels. So it's not like getting in to see them, hopefully, which will be dealt with, but the community can enjoy the aesthetic and the history, and it is about the history of Harlem and African-American culture and progress over, centuries. So we should break, because I know that, do you have one burning? Okay, you get one burning question, and then we get to go upstairs and we've got food.
Thank you. I waited long enough. So regarding those murals that you placed on, that were shown on the screen upstairs, I credit you for showing them. And regarding the former Lincoln Hospital, you need to do something with it. You may have to battle out with the mayor, the governor, and the president, aka the Mod Squad. Okay, well, you should contact the South Bronx Community Congress and South Bronx Unite, because I'm sure they'll help you.
Well, that's above my pay grade, but Eric, it's within yours.
Yeah, I think we could talk more offline, but yeah, would love your suggestions.
Thank you, everybody. There's